welcome to CIO News. I am Khushbu, Soni, your host for the broadcast and chief editor at CIO News. This is our exclusive interview series with our digital innovators of India, powered by Rockwell Automation. It is a recorded session and will be available on our website, that is ciunews.co.in, and our CIO News LinkedIn handle. It gives me an immense pleasure in introducing our guest for today. He is Bhuwan Lodha, the Chief Digital Officer at Mahindra Group for the automotive sector. Bhuwan is a digital leader with 20 plus years of experience of transforming organizations with cutting edge technology, business processes, and analytics. Bhuwan has worked with several brands such as McKinsey, Nokia, and SAP, and he's also an executive working group member for accelerating digital transformation for World Economic Forum. Bhuwan, it's an absolute pleasure to have you, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be a very great discussion and insightful discussion.
Thank you for having me, Khushbu. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. I'm also accompanied by Arvind, Kakru, the director at Rockwell Automation India. Arvind leads the end user, OEM, EPC, and industry business segments for Rockwell Automation in India and South Asia. He is responsible for executing the country's strategy to achieve sales for all the segments by industry verticals, region, and business units. Arvind, it's a pleasure to have you as well, and good to see you again.
Thanks for having me, Khushbu. Pleasure talking to you both.
Great. So without further ado, I wanted to have a first question for Bhuwan. Wanted to understand what does your typical day look like, being a chief digital officer for such a large brand like Mahindra Group. What is your typical day, Bhuwan?
All right, Khushbu, a great question. A typical day comprises of 3 elements, and each of these 3 can take anywhere between 0 to 100% of the day's time. First is about working with my department heads and figuring out what their priorities are, what are the impediments, and if there is anything that requires immediate attention or help. And not just department heads, there are several times when we meet with our vendors who are working critical projects for us, or some teams that are in the middle of some new implementations. That's one. Second, I personally get involved in some of our key transformation initiatives. So a lot of the work that we do involves significant amount of transformation from a process perspective, and also from a perspective of deploying new technologies. So I take stock of where we are on those, if there is any help needed, both from a progress and an update perspective. And the third part is, a regular business as usual operations. We run a large ship, and there are fires. So a lot of firefighting happens across. Something's not working at the dealer, something's not working for some supplier, and so on. So those have to be fixed. So I spend some part of my day kind of trying to take stock of that. So good part of, so balanced day, taking care of, teams, relationships, vendors, etc. Getting immersed in large transformative efforts, and then some time at solving operational issues and taking care of day-to-day operations as well.
Wonderful, awesome. Bhuwan, we also know that Mahindra and Mahindra has always taken a series of ambitious initiatives throughout its history, and Mahindra and Mahindra was one of the first players to start creating electric vehicles before the concept of electric vehicles even became popular. And were the first to launch in India's first driverless tractor. So I wanted to understand, what steps do you consider towards the vision of becoming a digital innovator in this automotive industry? What are the strategies that you look at for driving these initiatives?
Yeah, Khushbu, so look, as a group, Mahindra has been very progressive. Our leadership across sectors have always propelled the management to look at cutting edge of technology. Digital is the center stage of innovation at M&M. And we always keep looking for ideas that will not just take us closer to the customer, closer to the problem, but also take us to the next level of innovation. You mentioned a few things. Of course, those are marquee things, but there are multiple small prototypes, proof of concepts, pilots that we continuously run in order to ensure that we are testing latest technologies. At the same time, we are ensuring that whatever the business can get is available to them as benefit from digital and technology. When it comes to emerging technologies, specifically AI, IoT, manufacturing technologies, and so on, and then also AR, VR, we've invested quite a bit of our time, effort, and resources in ensuring that we kind of find use cases and stand behind them to see results and bring them at scale to our businesses. So those things, as a culture, we've inculcated all the way downstream. And you take any department all the way from what we do at dealers to e-commerce to our manufacturing plants to our design labs, there will be some experiment going on.
Right.
Many of these experiments get deferred, and few of them also get picked up for scaling up, and those are the ones that become innovations of the future. So constant innovation is part of our culture.
Wonderful. Arvind, if you can add up to this, and would love to know your thoughts also on how you've seen this brand, coming up with innovations like this.
Sure. Khushbu, yeah, and we have been working very closely with Mahindra, not only on the automation side, but also on the digital side, and of late, cyber security as well. So we have exposure of, having worked very closely with Mahindra and the way things have been evolved. And you rightly said, and Bhuwan talked about it, moving to the electric vehicle side and committing a lot of investment in that space. And the paradigm has actually shifted. If you see actually a lot of things that are driving these innovations, they're resulting from global economic, social pressures, also shifting consumer demands. The technology is changing. Intelligent manufacturing advancements have happened to a very large extent, and there's a changing workforce, which is like more relevant, digitally more savvy, and there's a tribal knowledge already with people, and those kind of dynamics are at play. At the same point of time, the challenges remain in the industry, which is into scheduling and delivery of these automotive systems, visibility, control of production, maintaining quality and compliance standards as well, reducing the costs and losing skilled workforce. Those are the things that are still challenges. And I know Mahindra has been working very, very greatly into IoT side analytics, because that gives you a good value around supply chain productivity, a lot of gains over there, multi-dimensional manufacturing, AR, again, that's a huge thing for human labor productivity and also trainings, etc., to a very large extent. So these are some of the things, that are evolving, have been there for some time, but, getting better and better.
True. True. Great. My next question is, Bhuwan, to you. What are the latest, proven digital and sustainability technologies and practices that you've adopted and you plan to adopt for a scalable and elastic IT/OT infrastructure and IT/OT security management in the post-COVID times?
Yeah, so Khushbu, specifically for IT/OT, we've adopted a lot of best practices from the industry. Over the last couple of years since I took over, we've not just taken one step, but a few more steps forward, both in terms of automation, like Arvind was saying, but also in terms of security and so on. Best practices like active threat detection, right? Like live monitoring of network traffic, like segregating IT and OT networks physically and logically, are some of the things that we have started doing now. But at the same time, we've also started committing significant amount of effort and investment in ensuring that our systems are fully secure, and our systems are able to stand up to any threat. Plus, they are resilient enough that in case of an incident, we are able to recover quickly and get back to an operating mode quickly. So significant amount of investments. We are bringing in a lot of best practices from industry leaders like Rockwell and others. At the same time, investing a huge amount of effort and time to understand where the world is moving and how can we as an Indian manufacturer kind of show the path for rest of the Indian industry to get to a point where we are no lesser than the first.
Awesome, wonderful. While it's great to know. I'm sure there'll be challenges, to drive such innovations. And if you can highlight, if there are any challenges that you face, and how do you kind of overcome, while driving these transformations internally?
Yeah. So from my perspective, look, there are a couple of challenges. As of today, the biggest challenge is talent. Getting talent in the industry at this point is almost as acute a problem as chip shortage. Everyone talks about chip shortage. Everyone talks about semiconductor supply chain issues, but skilled talent supply issue is an even bigger challenge.
Right.
And not just us, but I think the industry at large is facing it.
Right.
It is, of course, a cycle. We'll go through it and come back, with a more stable ecosystem. But right now, there's a lot of churn in the market, and talent is becoming a problem. Second big challenge for us is justifying investment in things which are needed but do not but have not been traditionally regular, right? Things like OT security. Over the last year or so, we've been able to make a case for why we need it, and now we are in a path. But I think industry at large will need to convince their leadership, convince the board teams, convince the CEOs on why investing in OT security, for example, is important, both from a resilience and also from a continuity perspective. At Mahindra, we've been able to do that successfully, so we've overcome the challenge. But I think the industry at large still faces the challenge where it sounds like an expense rather than an investment. For me, security is an investment. It is important to make that investment because it certainly gives you significant amount of payback in terms of de-risking, in terms of ensuring that you have the right layers in place to protect your business continuity and so on. So those are key challenges. Of course, the third and not to be lost challenge is also to ensure that we have the right governance set up around all of these large strategic transformation programs. Having experts come in, do something is important, but having a regular cadence to keep improving what we are doing and also keep checking whether this is the right thing and going in the right direction or not is also something that we are putting in place. And it is very important for the industry to take cognizance of. Running large transformation programs without governance in mind can lead to short-sighted success, but longer-term failures. So we have to ensure that. So.
Awesome. Great. Arvind, while you also interact with a lot of organizations from the automotive perspective, if you can highlight some of these challenges that organizations face, and how is Rockwell Automation also helping with these challenges?
Yeah, and Bhuwan talked about a lot of them. I also kind of alluded to a few. Overall, I would say the whole ecosystem, in a typical automotive world is changing quite a bit, and I'll go to challenges, coming out of that, and possibly what are the action points there, just from a domain point of view or industry specific point of view, implementing electric and autonomous technologies is pretty critical. You have 2 or 3 more elements which are very peculiar to automotive industry, which is like quicker model refresh, multiple variations in terms of kind of models that are rolling out and things like that, and phasing out of vehicles and reducing the time to market, etc. These are some proactive business things that have to be kind of taken care of. So in that sense, streamlining the business and the manufacturing processes becomes very critical. Bhuwan talked about skilled workforce shortage, which is not just on the digital side, younger workforce and all those kind of dynamics driving that, but even on the traditional industry knowledge, chip shortage or integrated supply chain, those are some of the things that have to be taken care of. And overall, there has to be a manufacturing efficiency, flexibility, and agility, which would, other than some of the things that we talked about, but build to order, end-to-end traceability in case there's a defect that has to be recalled and those kind of things. Just in time, just in sequence production, which is very efficient way of looking at things in terms of managing your inventory and costs, that come with it. So, and then also analytics in terms of AI and machine learning, which will help you give a real value for money for specific use cases. And in some cases, there's a regulatory compliance also. So in that sense, first of all, having connected machines on the shop floor is very critical. Going one level above, a connected factory is very critical from that point of view, because that gives you the basic kind of connectivity there, and which helps you get to a very smart environment which is connected across the enterprise. And taking it to the full level, if you have multiple plants, you have them connected, you can look at the variations, you can look at bigger insights, you can look at the historical data, analyze what is happening and not happening. And then finally coming to the point of the OT piece of it, which was more related to I would say cyber security and making it very compliant. Bhuwan talked about threat detection systems, so I think some of those things, getting the IT OT integration right, getting your smart manufacturing right, I think some of those things are very critical, that we keep on seeing, but they have been evolving and they help manufacturers become much more efficient and productive and be the leaders in their own right. Have an end-to-end kind of visibility of what is going on and do some of the things proactively, that help them, look at all the critical aspects of, their whole environment, manufacturing environment.
Let me add one point. I think you make an important point there. 2 more points to add. I think, Arvind, what you mentioned is valuable, because getting machines connected gives you the ability to start collecting data, and having 2 machines, work in collaboration and so on over a software layer. I think one thing needs to be done beyond that, which is to build a common source of truth for all data that comes out of our common processes, right? All the way from field to customer to manufacturing. It is important to also build a warehouse or a lake which allows us to bring all of our data in one place, so that mining of data to enable some of the advanced use cases using AI, ML, etc. becomes possible. Otherwise, we are always thinking of one thing in isolation, but when we all bring all of it together, I think it becomes much more powerful, which is, I think, what you're mentioning. Second thing is on the supply chain side, Arvind, you're right. It is important to bring all aspects of the connected supply chain under one roof. So all the way from demand planning to inventory planning to supplier constraints to scenario management, and then eventually to real production schedules on a weekly, daily, etc. basis. It's important to bring all of this under one system. At Mahindra, at least, we are now moving away from ad hoc implementation of systems which take care of one module at a time to a more integrated system, which will allow us to flow data all the way from customer side of demand, markets, macro factors, all the way to our planning systems. Data from suppliers also needs to come in order for us to make it realistic and then feed that back into downstream systems into our plants. We are making significant efforts in ensuring that our supply chain systems are not just digital and connected, but also smart, so that we are able to make much better decisions across the value chain of the automotive business.
So,
Yeah.
wonderful insights. Sorry, go ahead, Arvind. Sorry to cut.
No,
Sorry,
I
you
was
were
just
saying.
saying, typically, yeah, manufacturing execution systems, they are the right kind of, I would say, system. One of the options, that possibly Mahindra is already using, that connects your supplier base on one side to customers, and integration with the ERP, which takes care of all of those things. You have total visibility over the whole value chain, how the demand is shaping up. You need to produce more or produce less, those kind of things.
Yeah.
So absolutely right. Yeah.
Awesome, great. My next question is, Bhuvan, if you can help us with insights on what are the security requirements you consider before moving to the digital platforms or conduct business digitally, and how do you look at OT cybersecurity in this dynamic era?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is an area which requires deep expertise. It is not something that I can set an agenda for. So what we've done is we've engaged with experts in figuring out what are the security requirements before we take a decision on a new digital platform or a new cloud provider and so on. And we bring security in the room before technology decisions are made. So that's one major change that we've done. Second change we've done is we've also ensured that the budgets needed for security implementation and security considerations are not an afterthought, but are a part of the regular thought process when we make proposal. So bringing security to the front on the table to discuss the future architecture, the future solutions, the future infrastructure, and so on. At the same time, not seeing cloud, not seeing security as an expense on top of our current investment, but making it a part of the project itself, so that our CISO team, our vendors who are providing solutions on security, etc., are deeply embedded in the way we are planning our digital migration. Of course, we're also looking at pilots to run some of our core manufacturing systems out. There we will come across a new set of thinking on how to approach security. Right now, the way of approaching security is very traditional, right? You physically isolate a network, you have your own servers and everything's secure. But when we move to cloud, we'll have to adopt new ways of thinking about security and new measures around what is our security posture, what kind of risks are we seeing, and how are we going to respond to certain situations in the new cloud-based world. So those are early days that we are still figuring out, but the path is very clear. We're going to move to cloud very soon, and we are going to see a very new way of looking at security, especially on the OT side of things.
Awesome. Awesome. And what are your thoughts about revisiting the entire digitization budget and roadmap in line with business roadmap and the technology roadmap for your organization? Like,
so I'll take a step back. Look, digitization budget or digitalization budget is generally derived from two things. One is things that we have to run and things that we have to build, right? Of course, things that we have to run. So there is no There's no complexity around it. Things that we have to build are often seen as IT expenses, and hence, are never understood fully but sanctioned at some point. What we're doing now is we're trying to bring customer in the room when we discuss these budgets. We're trying to articulate how every investment of ours, whether it is about bringing new digital channels to life, or building a new planning system, or setting up a new digital manufacturing initiative, etc., will help our customers. And when we plan our budgets, there are three aspects that are considered: whether the investment will help us grow top line, whether the investment will help us bring efficiencies and hence bottom line impact, and whether the investment will help us get closer to the customer and elevate the overall experience that we are able to deliver, either to the end customer or to our B2B customers like suppliers, dealers, and so on. So we look at our budgets in that sense, and quite a few significant amount of investments are being planned for next several years, both in terms of bringing customer experience to the next level, and to bringing new and emerging technologies to bring real efficiencies in our operations at our manufacturing plants, at our supply chain, and other operations internally.
Great, awesome. Arvind, if you can, probably share with us what are the best practices organizations should look at when evaluating technology partners, for such transformation initiatives.
Yeah, Khushbu, yeah. So selecting a technology partner is not as easy as it seems, and Bhuwan was possibly talking or hinting towards that. It can possibly help with aligning with the company's mission statement and the feature set or the technology that you use, deploy, kind of accomplish that mission. Using technology as a primary lever to evaluate the partner, can get you somewhere, but it may not be everything. There could be various other valuable outcomes, that possibly have to be factored in. People especially try to look at multiple things, which stems from the fact of experience, of having done such kind of things, having a sufficient team, presence closer to the customer, also locally, also because a lot of the ecosystem is changing. What is the technology roadmap of that company? Because these products have their own life, because of technology changes, because of maintenance over a period of time, and because of the software platforms itself changing very, very quickly. Not so much on the hardware side, but again, that is changing. So those things are pretty critical. Then you look at the financial strength, long-term vision, existence, those kind of things. How much of kind of value is derived over there, especially if you're looking at a large set of use cases. You're looking at a larger manufacturing footprint, execution of those kind of things, which have to be kind of done and sustained over a long period of time. They have their own utilization over a period of time, or longevity in the area that you care about. So those things are also critical. Flexibility is again something that is important, and also people tend to look at the cost angle is also critical, because as Bhuwan was saying, top line, bottom line, people, especially on the funding side, to the question that you were asking, they would like to have a look at the return of investment. Otherwise these can be never ending projects without an outcome and things like that, and that doesn't overall in the long term kind of make a good impact on an organization, and the tendency of using those kind of things becomes lesser. But you also look at total cost of ownership over a logical period, which could be 3 to 5 years and stuff like that. So I think some of those things are really critical. In my view, there are a lot more others in terms of service and portfolio and people you deploy and those kind of things, but I guess that takes care of bulk of it.
Awesome. Great. I think this has been a wonderful discussion. Before we end, I just have one last question for you, Bhuvan. If you can share certain do's and don'ts or any best practices for our viewers from the CIO and CDO community, any best practices that you would like to share or learnings that you can share? Sorry, I guess you're on mute.
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, couple of big learnings for me as I'm taking on this journey. One is keep the customer in the center, right? No matter whether we are making an intervention in the design stage, manufacturing stage, or e-commerce stage, it does not matter. Finally, what matters is how we are able to impact the life of the customer positively, right? So keep the customer in the center and kind of draw your inspiration from there. Number two, identify quickly which decisions are one-way doors and which decisions are not. As a CIO or a CTO, a lot of times we make decisions that we know will revert quickly or we can iterate on. But sometimes we make decisions that we know we will not be able to change.
Right.
Selecting a platform or making a investment into a certain type of technology. Identifying which decisions are one-way doors, doing due diligence and proper research before making those decisions will save a lot of effort in the longer run.
Right.
But at the same time, identifying which decisions should be quickly made and can be revisited in a few weeks, months, etc. Are also important to identify, because if you're making an app, it does not matter if it's a native app or a web-based app or a progressive web app, right? You just quickly get it out in the market. And if it needs to change in the next year, you change it. It is much quicker to make apps than sometimes it is to make decisions. So identifying one-way doors versus revolving doors when it comes to IT decisions, I think is very important and a big learning as well. So these two are the few that I wanted to share.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. Once again, I think these are very good key takeaways, and I, really like the way we have, covered everything in terms of the responses and the questions. So it's a great discussion and good insights for our viewers through this episode. Thank you once again, Bhuvan. Thank you so much, Arvind, for joining on this platform and sharing your valuable insights for us.
Thank you. This was fun.
Thank you so much. Thank you.